And in the same book of Deuteronomy chapter 1, which you need to read and also get to see the entire book for yourself, the entire chapter for yourself. The word of God says, Moses, at this point, he's just given a chronicle of sorts. It's just how you sit down and a story is being given. So this is what is going on in this situation, because these things happened. You read the book of Numbers, you will now see them in their present form. Now here he's giving it in past tense, trying to show them where God has brought them from. And so the word of God says, when God said in Mount Horeb, he said to them very clearly, advance and move, break camp and advance into the hill and the country of the Amorites. Go to the neighboring country, neighboring people, do this and this, and take up your possession, because this is the land which I told your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that I was going to give them. So go in and take possession. That was the command of God. Realize that, because that is what God said. Break camp, advance, and go to place A, B, C, D. Do A, B, C, D, and importantly, take possession of the land which I swore to your fathers. And so when they were listening to Moses, at this point, they had become so many. And so the number was quite large that Moses needed to get help so that he could help govern and rule over the people. So he said, you've become too heavy a burden for me to carry alone, because the Lord has increased you in numbers, just like he promised Abraham. Remember when Abraham looked to the sky and there was stars when he was having a conversation with God, and God said, I'm going to make you have great numbers like this. So at this point, when we're looking at them, they've become so many that Moses by himself cannot rule these people. So they decided, let's appoint people from each tribe so that these people can help me rule. So he said, choose some wise, understanding, and respected men from each of your tribes, and I will set them over you. And you said to me, now Moses is saying, remember, you answered and said, what you propose to do is good. So I took the leading men of your tribes, wise and respected, and appointed them to have authority over you as commanders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, of tens, and as tribal officials. And I charged your judges at that time, hear the disputes between your people, judge fairly, whether the case is between two Israelites or between an Israelite and a foreigner residing among you. Do not show partiality in judging. Hear both small and great alike. Do not be afraid of anyone, for judging belongs to God. Bring me any case that is too hard, and I will hear it. And at that time, I told you everything you are to do. And so that's good. That's tick, tick, tick. Because now they're getting ready, and they're sort of like aligning themselves so that there's no confusion. And so they're putting even leadership in place so that they can do what? They can go and take up their possession, because God has broken the spirit of stagnation. So we continue. So he says, then the Lord our God commanded us. We set out from Horeb, that is verse 19. We set out from Horeb and went toward the hill country of the Amorites through all that vast and dreadful wilderness that you have seen. So we reached Kadesh Barnea. And I said to you, you have reached the hill country of the Amorites, which the Lord our God is giving us. See, the Lord your God has given you the land. Go up and take possession of it, as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, told you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. These are things that God keeps on repeating. And so we need to really deal with this spirit called fear and this spirit called timidity or intimidation, because God keeps on saying this a lot. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Then, verse 22, then all of you came to me and said, let us send men ahead to spy out the land for us and bring back a report about the route which we are to take and the towns we will come to. And the idea seemed good to me. That is Moses speaking. So I selected 12 of you, one man from each tribe. They left and went up into the hill country and came to the valley of Eshcol and explored it. Taking with them some of the fruit of the land, they brought it down to us and reported, it is a good land that the Lord is giving us. But you were unwilling to go up. You rebelled against the command of the Lord. You grumbled in your tents and said, the Lord hates us. So he brought us out of Egypt to deliver us into the hands of the Amorites to destroy us. Where can we go? Our brothers have made our hearts melt in fear. They say the people are stronger and taller than us, and the cities are large with walls up to the sky. We even saw the Anakites there. Then I said to you, Moses, do not be terrified, do not be afraid of them. The Lord your God is going to go before you and will fight for you, as he did for you in Egypt before your very own eyes. And in the wilderness, there you saw how the Lord carried you as a father carries his son, all the way you went until you reached the place. In spite of this, you did not trust the Lord your God, who went ahead of you on your journey in fire by night and in a cloud by day, to search out places for you to camp and to show you the way to go. Then when the Lord heard what you said, he angrily and solemnly swore, no one from this evil generation shall see the good land I swore to give your ancestors, except for Caleb. He will see it, and I will give him and his descendants the land he set his foot on, because he followed the Lord wholeheartedly. Now, you need to read this for yourself, because we can stay here and read, and it's so interesting to read. So Moses is giving an account of everything that happened. God had already moved you from stagnation. God had already said, break camp and advance, but you yourselves. In fact, this idea of telling me to select leaders to send as spies was not a godly idea, 100% if you ask me. Because that sending of the 12 spies, they should just have trusted God. See, he used to lead them by night and by day. They should just have trusted that they said, send people so that they can tell us which route is good for us. But God used to do that for them. Because remember, even when they left Egypt, the place of bondage, there was so many routes. In fact, if you read the word of God, you will know that God actually led them through the longer route. He did not want them to go through the shorter route, because there they would have to fight their way into the other land. So he avoided them fighting, because if they fought, they would have just gone back to Egypt. So he decided to use a longer route, where he was going to part the Red Sea for them. And so if it was a choice of routes, God was doing it for them. And this is the setback that the enemy does to us. When God says it is time to advance, the enemy will start whispering certain ideas to you. And it looks good. In the eyes, it looked good that we are sending spies to go and check the land. It looked so good. But what in actual sense it was just a spirit of confusion that was just about to be sent their way. And so because God is a God of free will, he would not interfere with their choices. They wanted to go through the land and they wanted spies to go and help them. He said, okay. But what they didn't know is that they had listened to an alternate voice that was going to set them into another camp, not just of derailment and stagnation, but in a camp where they were all going to die. And none of them, except for Caleb and Joshua, in that generation, the Lord calls it an evil generation. Because of not trusting God, they're called evil generation. Because of not having trust and belief in God. And so I'm saying to us this morning, God is saying advance. But if you start giving yourself your own ideas, you start leading yourself, that's setting yourself to a place of self-sabotage that God is not going to be a part of. Is it interesting that it's interesting that when it was time, Joshua had taken the mandate and Moses had died, and it was time for him to go to the promised land and lead the children of Israel, he sent out 2 spies, because he was among the 12 that were sent. Only he and Caleb were exempted from death, because the 10 died because of their unbelief. It's interesting because he decided, well, let me not make another mistake and send 12. Let me send 2, so that, because I remember in my time, the 2 of us brought a good report. And they had just been sent. To go and check the land, not to give a judgment or a conclusion as if they were the ones to give these people that land. God, Moses sent them, go see the land, bring the fruit, full stop. They came back with a message of confusion. They came back with a message that made people lose their lives. They came back with a message that kept people in a spirit and in a den and in a place of stagnation even much longer. And this kind of stagnation, God never broke it. They died in that place. They never saw the promised land. And so God is saying to us, advance. Is there things within us, elements within us that may cost us this gift of advancement? I pray that God is going to help us, because they advanced, but for a very short while. They got into stagnation again. And all of them, unless and except for Joshua and Caleb and the people that were 20 years and under, the rest died there. They never saw the promised land. And so this morning, when God is saying this to us, we need to make room within ourselves to understand that God is going to do an exceedingly abundantly kind of a miracle. So create room for that, so that when you see it, it does not shock you to a place of unbelief. God says, now unto him, Ephesians 3:20, who is able to do exceedingly above all we think, imagine, or ask of him, according to the power that works within us. So begin to make room. What you're asking for, begin to create room for it. Like we are told in the book of Isaiah, enlarge the place of your tent, of your dwelling. Stretch out your curtains wide. Do not hold back. Lengthen your cords. Strengthen your stakes. And make sure that you are creating a large room for that which you're asking God for, so that you don't see the miracle and the wonders and the things that God is giving unto you and be shocked and be scared and say, God, I don't think you can do this for me. And then you stay in a place of stagnation because of your own self. May God help us this morning, so that we're not the people who are self